Howdy everybody, and welcome back to the Mega Man tutorial. So last time we set up a bunch of stuff to allow us to kill our player off, but before we cut off the episode I forgot to do some testing. So let's get cracking on that testing. Let's give our program a little whirl, see if we actually compile. Alright. See if we can take some damage. There we go. Yeah, that's the stuff. As you can see, we start right up at the beginning of the level when we die, and our health is restored to full. And everything's in slow motion because OBS is really bad at recording at 60 FPS. And we'll kill ourselves off. And we'll do this one more time so that we can get over to the game over room. And next time I do a test, I'll throw in, as you can see, lights are at 0. So next time I do a test, turn the lives down to 0. That way we don't have to go through killing ourselves the long way. Come on, die. There we go. Yep, I did forget something. Forgot to put the objects into the game over room. There we go. So pop open the game over room. And we'll need to run in our room objects. Game over room 1. And give you that sprite as well. They don't necessarily need the sprite since they don't really draw based on the sprite, but it just makes it easier to see them. So we have those over there. Come over to our stats object. Lives 0. Let's try this again real quick. We need to, one last thing that I didn't put into these. When we go to the room, we need to set our camera's mode. Put it to fixed, so the camera goes back to the 0, 0 position. There we go. And there's probably lots of other little things that could be fixed or improved that would necessarily be done if we were doing a full game. But since we're not doing a full game, I haven't actually gone through doing all this stuff. Like, as you can see here, I haven't bothered tiling in this little area right here since the player's never actually supposed to go over there. And we actually need to create a new object here. Call it obj underscore obj kill underscore plane. And we'll give this a solid sprite. Don't need the game over room anymore. And we simply put this over here. Let me make sure about that. Nope, actually you're supposed to go a little bit under. There we go. That way it doesn't instantly trigger the instant Mega Man hits right here. Because then he'd explode and die right here. Well, he'd disappear. And we don't want that to happen. We want him to disappear once he gets down far enough that his sprite would normally disappear. We want to kill him at that point. Anyways, this is just killing him if he falls off a ledge. Stuff. Let me pop in the code for it. So when you collide with the player object, then just kill him. Set him into the death state and execute the death state immediately. And that's another thing I could have probably fixed up a little bit to make it a bit easier. When you go into the death state, you would have like a variable in here that you'd flip so it doesn't do the create the death spheres or anything, since I don't think the death spheres are created when you fall off a ledge. You just die. Anyways, these are all little things that you notice after you think you've done everything. Another thing we need to put in are checkpoint objects. obj_checkpoint, and again give it a sprite, and it's sprite solid. You don't have to bother with making this invisible, but I don't remember if the collision event would happen if you don't make it invisible. So anyways, we'll just leave it visible since the player will never see it anyways. With the checkpoint, we'll just throw that into there, something like that. So what's going to happen with the checkpoint here? So we have this room here, and we have a checkpoint, which I can't click because this is in the way. So I need to turn off the room boundaries. There we go. Oh, duh. I've been putting this stuff on the room boundaries layer. We want them on the instances layer. And turn off room boundaries since we don't need to see it. Reason why you make it that big is that way, no matter how fast the player is moving, he can't move through the kill plane before he actually dies. So that wouldn't be good if that happened. And obj checkpoint. Oh yeah, actually, obj checkpoint. We need to take you. You go there, and you go up 1, 2. You go up to the top of the room with this because we're using this top left position point here as the reference point for where we're going to teleport our go object to. So Mega Man is teleported into this point when he starts this stage. So come in and say with our checkpoint object, again collision with obj player. Of course it works if you don't have it visible, because the collision works if it's not, even if it's not visible, because this checkpoint actually works. So yeah, you can disable the visibility for the draw plane. It'll be slightly important for performance reasons, slightly. Nothing that any modern computer would worry about. Anyways, set our room underscore equal to instance underscore place x y obj underscore room underscore boundaries. Actually, of our underscore room. There we go. With obj underscore stage underscore start and stance underscore destroy. Again, this is also something that you could move this collision to the player object rather than having the checkpoint check for the player, which again would be a performance thing that would be good. But again, modern computers don't care. But if you're trying to program for the NES, you would definitely do it that way. So spawn underscore x underscore is equal to other dot x, spawn underscore y underscore is equal to other dot y, other being referring to the checkpoint's position. Cam underscore x underscore is equal to other dot underscore room. Ah, that's why I made an instance variable, because you can't reference that's why I made an instance variable, because you can't reference a local variable from inside of the width. Cam x is other dot room underscore dot x, cam underscore y underscore is equal to other dot room underscore dot y. So we're just moving the camera to this XY position, because that's where the room begins. And we're moving the spawn point to other.x and y, which would be right here. Because this go object bases its spawn on whatever room it's in and whatever position this top left corner is in. So if we come into the game, as you can see, we are in the proper room. Checkpoint's there. And if we kill ourselves, well, it won't work because we have our lives set to come over to our enemy objects. Just drop in a bat real quick. And we go back to our stat object. Make our lives 1. That way we can actually survive. To try one more time. Check to make sure our checkpoint is working. Alright, move up. Kill Mega Man. And there we go. As you can see, you spawned right where the checkpoint would be. There are a couple checkpoints in Mega Man here. So just move you back there. And we'll throw another checkpoint in. I think there's one right here, actually. It doesn't really matter. You just throw it in, make sure it goes all the way up to the top of the room, so that Mega Man spawns in at the top of the room instead of spawning in right there or wherever. And that should be good for that. We are currently at 13 minutes, and I completely forgot to zoom in for you all. So if you have an issue with any of the code or you weren't able to read anything, just let me know. And I'll go back into it in the next episode. We are almost done with everything here, so we also need the boss doors. These are the famous boss doors that open and close. So let's create in room objects. obj underscore boss underscore door underscore open. Give it a sprite from, it's under miscellaneous, sprite woman door opening, I think. Yes, that's good. That's what we're looking for. And we want to give it a parent. We're actually going to give it the parent solid, because this is treated as a solid object, so Mega Man won't be able to walk through the door. But when we actually do get to the door, we will be able to detect that the door is there, or rather, that Mega Man has reached the door, because we are going to once again have the door check for the player. Yeah, don't get triggered over this. Ha ha ha, my humor is on point today. And this is, again, code that could have been put into a collision event or something. I guess it couldn't have been put into a collision event because you have to check X minus 1, so 1 to the left of the door for the player. And we're only checking to the left of the door. That way, when we're in the boss room, there will be a door that's visible right here in the boss room, and we don't want to accidentally be able to trigger that door, so we aren't checking to the right. Alright, so once the player is detected, we set trigger to true, var underscore inst is equal to instance underscore place x plus 16 y g underscore boss underscore door underscore close. We'll create that in a second. obj underscore player dot new underscore room underscore is equal to instance underscore place x plus sprite underscore width y obj underscore room underscore boundaries. We're going to use our transition object to handle the transition. There we go. So when the player is touching the door, then we set trigger to true. We check for a object boss door close. And we set the image index equal to 0 if there is one. And we set our image speed equal to 0.5. That way the door opens. And set transition direction to right. And we set the new room equal to x plus sprite width rather than just xy like usual, because we actually want to move the player slightly more than the normal 16 slightly more than the normal sprite width. We want to move him 2 sprite widths. That way he doesn't end up getting stuck inside of the door when he moves over to the other side. So when the animation ends, we destroy the opening door because we don't need the opening door anymore. And if triggered underscore and not animation underscore end, so if we're still opening, then we if not audio underscore is underscore playing boss underscore gate, then audio underscore play underscore sound boss underscore gate 1 false. So play the gate opening sound as long as we are opening still. And we still have to create that open door. So basically just duplicate the door open code and call it door closed. There we go. Duplicate the object. And we're going to change this from door open to door closing, which is just the animation in reverse. And I probably could have done that by using negative image speed or something instead. And speed equals 0. Index equal to 4. Yeah, I could have done this completely in reverse. I must have been really tired at the point when I actually wrote the code for this. And gotta delete this bit. This bit stays here because we're no wait. If animation end underscore speed is equal to 0. So once the animation ends, we stop the image from animating, but we do play the boss gate sound. And here, if throw in a little bit extra, not triggered, and it's this object player. There we go. So if the image index is equal to 0, so when we're at this point, but I set the image index to 0. The reason why it's that way is the closing door is invisible until the player transitions across the threshold. We don't want the closing door, so we want the image index equal to set to 0 here. And then we set the image index equal to 4 here. Confused myself on why I did the code the way I did. All I know is it actually works, so we can just drag the code into here. Yeah, you go right there, and door open goes right here, door open goes right here. Alright, so those are in place. And if we drag our spawn object over to here, we can test it out. Yeah, so I did something wrong there. So there are supposed to be door closed objects that already exist. So drag in the close object right there. And close the object right there. Alright, so now we got into the boss room. Okay, good. Let's see if I can decipher my own code here real quick. So with the open door on the left, you check for the player object. And you instance x plus 16 to the right of the door. You set that image index equal to 0. If we're setting that equal to 0 there, then why did we bother setting it to 4 here? Oh wait, I think that has something to do with over here. Well, we just set it to 0 there and didn't even bother with this at all. Maybe I just put it in there completely and forgot around why I needed it there. Guess that was some redundant code that I had in there for some reason, but didn't really need. Oh well. Must have been for something I was trying to do earlier, and then I fixed it, and then I forgot to get out the patch for why I needed it in there in the first place. Alright, so I completely confused myself there with why I was doing that. So it triggered image speed 0.5, so the gates start rising up. Tell our player to transition, plus 16, plus 1 extra sprite width. And oh wait, we did have a little bit of an extra thing in here, didn't we? So we had a variable about boss door right there. And in my code, I have this little thing about boss door times 2. So it actually adds in an extra sprite width at that point when the boss door is there. See, this is what happens when you end up making all the code, and now you come back to it a month later and you don't even remember why you did anything. And the reason for this is so that we do know what room we're transitioning to. And then when we close the door, image index is equal to 0. That means the very first time when we 0.5. Probably don't need this in here. Just need to know that the image index is 0, and we've been oh wait, we do set that up so that way when the player is right over to the side of the door, once the transition has finished completely, then it does this rather than so that it waits until the player is actually in the room and before you actually do the closing bit. Alright, so that's everything then. So I think we're done for this episode, and we're going to put in the boss in the next episode. So thank you everybody for coming. It is time to thank some Patreon sponsors. I'd like to thank Fragile Hearts, Crew Patreon, Damien, Kenneth Klein, John Dickey, and Vladimir Soldatov for your support of the NES GameMaker. You help keep my lights on, or at the very least, you're going to help buy some art for the website eventually. So thank you very much for your donations, and I greatly appreciate them. remember, if you have any questions or comments, leave them behind, and I'll try to help you out as best as I can. And of course, until next time, good luck with your programming.